A clay mask is one of the most fun and satisfying skincare rituals that I have embraced in my 40s. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about one specific clay that I started using this year. That clay is Rhassoul clay. So in this video, I am going to show you exactly how I make a Rhassoul clay mask, how I apply it, and I'm also going to share why a clay mask, whether it's Rhassoul or any other, can be so helpful for just making your skin feel smoother, cleaner, and just supporting a healthy, natural glow. So first, let's talk about what Rhassoul clay actually is. So this clay is sometimes called ghassoul clay, and it is mainly sourced from Morocco. It has a long and rich history of use when it comes to cleansing the skin and cleansing the hair as well. Now, in terms of its mineral content or mineral composition, the main thing to know about Rhassoul is that if we were to compare it to some other popular clays, so clays like kaolin or even, let's say, bentonite or maybe even French green clay, for example, Rhassoul is seen as the one that has the highest diversity of minerals, all right? So all clays have minerals. Rhassoul is seen as having the most diversity of minerals. So some of those minerals include magnesium oxide, silicon oxide, zinc oxide, iron oxide, potassium oxide, and the list goes on. Okay, so it is really very diverse in its profile compared to some other clays. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is Rhassoul's cleansing properties. Now, to understand this, we need to just talk about why clays in general are often used for cleansing, okay? And this information is really information that I learned from GreenBeauty's channel. If you are familiar with her or not familiar, either way, I am going to link to her videos because she has some really, really good videos about clays. And so I really learned a lot from her. And when it comes to clays in general, there are two main properties that we need to understand. And that is the fact that clays absorb and they also adsorb. So add with a D. Now, when it comes to absorption, this is one that is easy for us to see, right? If we mix water and clay, we can see that clay or that clay basically absorbs the water. So the absorption property really has to do with the fact that one thing is moving into another thing. So in the same way that water moves into a sponge, that in that same way, moist water can go into clay. So that's the absorption property of clay. But then there is the adsorption, which is AD, so adsorption property. And this one has more to do with the ability of one material to stick to the surface of another material. Okay, so we can think of it a little bit almost like with a lint roller, right? If you have a lint roller, the lint sticks onto that roller. It doesn't go into the roller, right? Same thing when it comes to the clays is that they have this ability where basically the stuff, the gunk sticks to the surface of them. And when we rinse off that clay, then all of that is washed away. And so that is how clays basically cleanse when we talk about the ability to cleanse or remove impurities from the surface of the skin or even excess oil from the surface of the skin. Now, when it comes to Rhassoul specifically, the other thing to know is that it has the ability to remove mainly one particular set of, let's say, impurities, right? So all clays will remove different types of impurities. And the difference has to do with, again, the charge. So if you can think back to chemistry class when we talk about positive ions and negative ions, right? Positive, negative charge. So Rhassoul mainly will attract the positively charged impurities onto its surface. And it's not going to attract doesn't really remove as many of the negative charges. Okay, so again, this is going to change depending on the clay. So we're just talking here about Rhassoul. It mainly will attract positively charged impurities to its surface, and then those are the ones that get removed. So that, in a very simple way, is how Rhassoul works, right? So just wanted to give you that overview. And again, I highly encourage you to go and watch those videos from GreenBeauty. I'm going to link to them because she does a great job of going deeper into this. So now that you have this general understanding of Rhassoul's mineral composition and how it generally helps with cleansing the skin and removing impurities, the other thing that I want to share with you is who this clay is for. So if I just speak from my own personal experience, I can say that I find Rhassoul clay to be quite neutral. So in terms of how much it will soak up and dry up the skin, right? So I use other clays. I use bentonite. If I compare it to bentonite, bentonite is going to be stronger, more drying. If I were to compare it to, say, kaolin clay, which is another one that I like to use, kaolin is super, super, super mild. And to me, Rhassoul is one of those that really just sits in the middle. It's not super drying. It is really, I don't consider it to be irritating, but to be fair, I don't have any irritation issues when I use most any clay. I had some issues using pink clay, so I've stayed away from that one, but that was really the only one. But any other clay that I've tried, I have not had any issues with it. So in general, it is considered a good clay for all skin types. It's often recommended for people that, let's say, either have sensitive, also with dry skin, and also mature skin, which mature skin also can be dry, again, depending on the individual and your lifestyle and your diet and lots of other factors, right? So, but in general, you can just consider Rhassoul to be quite neutral and not too drying. All right, now it's time to talk about how I go about making my Rhassoul mask. So the Rhassoul clay that I use is one that I got off of Amazon, and I'm going to show it right here in the video, and I'm also going to link to it in the description. You will also need water. You will also need a glass bowl and a measuring spoon. Now, in terms of how much water and clay to use, Rhassoul is super easy to work with because all you need is equal parts clay and water. So on a normal day, I will use 1 tablespoon of Rhassoul clay with 1 tablespoon of water. For this video, I am using twice as much. So I'm using 2 tablespoons of clay and 2 tablespoons of water. That's just so I have a larger quantity. It's easier for me to demo through the camera and for you to see the consistency and how it mixes much more easily. So to make the mask, all you're going to do is you're going to place the clay in your glass bowl, then you're going to add in water. So then you're just going to stir everything with a mini silicone spatula. So I got these spatulas also off of Amazon. They're super practical. I don't use them for anything other than clay masks. And so you just mix and you stir for about 2 minutes, and you will eventually get to a very smooth and creamy consistency. There are not going to be any lumps at all. So, but you do need to at least give it a couple of minutes to mix properly. Once you're done mixing, then it's time to apply your mask. Now, for application, I always apply my mask in the morning, and I actually recorded this earlier today. So I had just come back from my morning walk. I had no makeup on. I just had lots of sweat and natural oils. So all I did was I just wiped down my face, removed sweat, removed the excess oil, and then I went ahead and I applied my mask. Okay. Now, when you're applying, you don't need a super thick layer, but you also don't want it to be so thin that you see your skin if you're looking through, right? So you should be able to just put like a medium amount of clay where it's not too heavy, but not too thin. The other thing that I like to do with Rhassoul and all my other clays is I like to also use them on my underarms, right? People talk about detoxing your armpits. And for if you're like me and you're using natural deodorants, right? You're not using some of the heavier stuff. I find this to be helpful. So typically when I make my mask, I will go ahead and just apply the excess on my underarms. When I rinse off the mask, I use warm water. I don't use soap because the mask is already cleansing. If I use soap on top of it, my face will feel drier. So on the day when I am using this mask, I just skip the soap part, but that's just for my face. When it comes to my armpits, I will still use soap, especially because, like I said in the video that I recorded this morning, I had just gone for a walk, so I needed to clean everything. All right, so that is basically how I go about using my Rhassoul mask. And also the other thing I want to mention is that I will use this pretty much like once a week, sometimes every 2 weeks. Again, it depends on the season and what I'm noticing with my skin, but typically no more than once a week when it comes to this or any other clay mask. That is what works for me. Now, the other thing I didn't mention is that my own skin type. So my skin, I will consider combination. So, I have a T-zone, which is not crazy oily, but I will say that it is a little more oily compared to the rest of my face. I think the rest of my face I would just consider to be normal. So that's my skin type. And like I said, personally, I don't have any issues when it comes to using this mask. I really do enjoy it. So if you're curious about clays, I encourage you to explore Rhassoul and see what you think for yourself. For me, I really do find it to be a very simple and grounding ritual. And I just find that I think as I get older, I want to be closer and closer to nature. And, this is literally putting mud on the skin, right? So that is very much getting in contact and connecting with nature, which is probably why it also feels so much more satisfying. So if that is something that you need more of in your life, well, this can be one small way to bring more of nature and more of her goodness into your experience. Now, if you enjoyed this video, I would love if you would give it a thumbs up. Please share if you have used Rhassoul and you have any feedback on it or any other tips, because I know people mix it with other things. You could mix it with like rose water, for example, right? So if you are doing other things with your Rhassoul clay, let me know, add it in the comments. I'm sure it will benefit somebody else who's going through the comment section. And if you just want more content like this, subscribe to this channel and also join my newsletter, because I am all about just making content that really just nourishes mind, body, soul as we go through midlife and beyond. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.